Hello and welcome to the Compass Church Online. My name is Anthony and I'm one of the pastors here at the Compass Church, and I am so glad that you have slowed down for a few minutes to join us for this teaching series called The Speed of Joy. Now, before we jump into the message, really quickly, a slow down word, right? Really quickly, go ahead and fill out your online connection card to let us know that you're worshiping with us here today. You can let us know how we can pray for you. You can go to our website as well and check out all the great things that are happening at our church. You can give online and stay connected to your church family through our website. I hope you're ready for a great message. Here it is.
Welcome everybody to the Compass Church and to our new series called The Speed of Joy. This should be fun. I just hit 100 miles an hour. How fun was that? Never done that before. Hey friends, welcome to the Autobahn Country Club in Joliet, Illinois. That was not real racing, but we've got a friend at the South Naperville campus named Connor Willis, and he is a professional auto racer. And he just invited me to ride along with him in a real race car. Let's do it, huh?
There's a lot of crazy.
That was nothing?
That was nothing.
That was nothing?
You didn't get to see anything yet.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Connor, thank you. This is so much fun. I love it. You have got quite the sport here. Fred, tell us, how long have you been racing cars?
So I've been racing cars, it's been 6 years now. It's my 6th year in racing. I started in go-karts, progressed the ranks, and now I'm racing across the world in the UK.
How old are you, Connor?
I'm 18 years old.
And so you started when you were 12?
Started when I was 12.
You were racing cars before you had a driver's license?
Yes, I was.
That's amazing. And where are you racing today?
So today I am racing in the UK, across the world, and all around the UK. There is 10 different racetracks that I'll be racing at this season.
That's awesome. You know, Connor grew up at the Compass Church, but is off now in the UK, back here on vacation, and then headed back over in a week or so.
Yes.
Very exciting.
So excited.
What do you like about car racing?
So ever since a little kid, I was kind of involved in motorsports with things with the motor, like dirt bikes, quads, and things. And I just got a thrill like no other. I had control of a vehicle that was fast. I love the adrenaline.
Yeah.
And ever since I found go-karts, I fell in love with that. It was more of a hobby, but I turned it into a career.
Yeah.
It's my passion now, and I want to pursue it like no other.
Yeah.
I feel like when I'm driving, it's almost like a roller coaster, but I'm in control.
Yeah.
And so I've just fell in love ever since starting, and I haven't looked back.
That's awesome. Connor, you love racing, but you also love Jesus Christ. Is that true?
Very true.
Oh, that's
Yes.
awesome. How did you come to faith?
So I was always involved in the Christian family, always involved in church and things, but I never really understood why I went to church every Sunday. And so I think ever since junior year in high school, I met a group of friends. We all started pursuing youth group. I met Mark at the South Naperville campus.
Our youth pastor at South Naperville.
Yes, I had a great time. And it just, through that group of people, it brought me way closer to Jesus. And I understood kind of the importance of it. And now I haven't looked back, just like racing. And I put God first in everything in my life and love it.
You know, in the UK, among the racing community there, are some of them aware you're a Christian?
Yes, I put crosses in the car. I have crosses on my helmet. I try to spread the word as much as possible.
That's awesome.
It's definitely a little bit difficult. I feel like in the UK it's less of a known thing, but I'm trying for sure.
A light in the darkness. That's fantastic.
Yes.
That's awesome.
Yes.
Hey, I wanted you and I were chatting about the importance of braking in a race. Can you speak to that just a bit?
Yeah, so braking's everything. We're all fighting for tenths of a second on track, and braking is that's like all of our time. We want to brake as least as possible, and we got to do that. We got to brake as hard as possible. So it's all about intensity and timing, really. And so our initial hit of the brakes is super hard to slow the car down.
When you say hard, like how many pounds of pressure?
So it's about 400 pounds of pressure going through your foot to the pedal. And so you have a strong metal pedal and a strong foot to hit that brake.
Yeah. What are the consequences if you fail to brake well?
If you fail to brake well, you can lock up a tire. That's really common, especially on cold tires. Cold tires, you don't have as much grip. There's not heat in the tire, so it doesn't stick to the surface as well as possible. When doing that, you have a flat surface because the tire stays stationary while you're still moving.
Yeah.
And that creates vibrations, and that's going to upset the car. Yeah. You have that. If you miss a braking zone, you can go end up in a wall. It could be dangerous.
That's bad.
It is very bad. And you can end up in the grass and the car could be totaled. So there's risk involved, but over professional training and through a lot of extensive kind of development, I've been able to develop where I have a consistent, under control braking manner.
Yeah, so both to prevent disaster, but also to maximize your race score.
Yes.
Braking skillfully is really important.
Super important.
You know, I find it fascinating. Here we are in a series called The Speed of Joy, and in it we're going to be learning from Jesus how to manage our speed in life. And sure enough, braking, learning how to slow down correctly is going to be key to Christ's strategy for getting the most in life. And so can't wait for this series. Jesus has a lot to teach us about the speed of joy, how to find the maximum life that he designs us all to enjoy. So I can't wait to dive into, I know you're excited too, our new series, Following Jesus on Managing the Pace of Life. Let's do it. Thank you, Connor.
Thank you so much.
Friends, this is a rotor. It's an essential part of the braking system of a car. The caliper clamps down and pinches the rotor in order to slow it down. You know, when I was doing that race, it's so interesting. I went twice with Connor, and between the first and the second, he said, I want to have my brakes worked on, and they whipped off the tires, and the mechanic improved the braking. Braking, that's what we're going to talk about. And let me tell you, the most terrifying, by the way, that going with Connor was the scariest thing I've ever done in my life. And the thing that made it so hard is he would be going 130 miles an hour at a hairpin turn. And I'm like, slow down. And then at the last minute, he would slam on the brakes. And, you know, I was sure I was going to die. But I'm here and glad to still be alive. Braking, slowing down. Turns out it's an essential skill for living that Jesus Christ wants to teach us about. So our passage today is in Luke 10, starting in verse 38. As Jesus and his disciples were on their way, He came to a village where there was a woman named Martha who opened her home to him. Let me pause. So Martha, by the way, she is one of three siblings, Martha, Mary, and Lazarus, who Jesus later will raise from the dead. Those three siblings are dear friends of Jesus. And so here, when he's in their town of Bethany, it's natural that they would invite him in and his disciples to stay there. Well, it says she, Martha, had a sister called Mary who sat at the Lord's feet listening to what he said. To sit at the Lord's feet means to be a disciple. This Mary, she was a disciple. A disciple is a student, a learner. And so Mary's like, man, I gotta listen to Jesus. He is teaching the truth that transforms lives. And so she was so excited to learn from Jesus, but there's a problem, verse 40. But Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. In fact, she came to Jesus and she asked him, Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do all the work by myself? Tell her to help me. Typical sibling interaction. I imagine prior to this moment, Martha was giving Mary the eyes, like, get in the kitchen, we got more work to do, you're sitting there, But Mary just looked the other way, was not responding. And so Martha takes out her frustration on Jesus and says, tell my sister to get in here and help me. Verse 41, Martha, Martha, the Lord answered. By the way, when Jesus repeats her name, Martha, Martha, that's how compassion was conveyed. So this is not judgmental. This is very compassionate. He's guiding her out of love. Martha, Martha, the Lord answered, you are worried and upset about many things, but few things are needed, or indeed only one. And Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her. Wow. Friends, this correction, this redirection by Jesus to Martha is what we need in our society oh so badly. Let me make this point. I want to make the point that Martha, in entertaining Jesus and his 12 disciples, felt it appropriate to give them an extravagant feast, not a simple meal, but quite the elaborate dining enjoyment. I see that in a couple places. In verse 40, it said Martha was distracted by all the preparations. The word all, I've highlighted that. And in verse 41, you are worried and upset about many things. Turns out that the word all and the word many are both a translation of the Greek word polos. And polos, it means a lot. And that word is unnecessary, but it's been infused both by Luke, who's writing the gospel, and by Jesus when he's speaking, emphasizing the complexity of the tasks involved in making this great meal for the disciples. In fact, the New Living Translation translates it, she made a big dinner. And I probably would have done the same. I'm not judging Martha here. If you were entertaining Jesus and his disciples, would you have served them peanut butter and jelly sandwiches? Probably not. It was only natural because of the importance of the guests to try to put together an elaborate feast. What has resulted in the elaborate nature of this event is that Martha's crazy busy. She is trying to do so much in this one evening that busyness is distracting her, overwhelming her. And friends, that busyness is something that we deal with all the time. The more technology advances, it seems, the busier we get. Do you know, I read a stat that talked about technology advancing. Back before Thomas Edison invented the light bulb, back before people could flip on the lights and keep their house bright even in the evening, do you know that the average amount of sleep people got before the light bulb was 10 and a half hours of sleep? No kidding. Sun was down, got nothing else to do, let's go to bed. Makes me feel a little better. Sometimes I read about these ancient heroes who rose at 4 a.m. and I'm like, wow. Well, they went to bed at 5:30 in the evening, so that makes me feel a lot better about it. But yeah, the light bulb has made more hours of light for us and made us busier. Now technology has come to these little phones that we're supposed to simplify our lives, but the reality is that the communication, the information, the expectations that come through those devices have made our lives busier than ever. If you ask someone, hey, how you doing? One of the things we hear is, well, I'm good. Woo, just real busy. We are a busy people. In fact, two psychologists, one by the name of Rosemary Sword and the other by the name of Philip Zimbardo, together they wrote a book called The Time Cure. And in that book, they give two tests to see if you have hurry sickness. By the way, that is an official psychological disorder, hurry sickness. And they said one of the tests is when you're at the grocery store. When you approach the checkout lines, do you look for the line that has the fewest people? Do you look in their carts to measure how much time will each person take based on the quantity of stuff in their carts? And then if you even wait and notice where you'd be in the other line had you chosen that one to make sure you made the right choice, you have got hurry sickness. The other test, they say, is when you're in the car, when you pull up to a traffic light. If you look at which lane has the fewest cars and change lanes based on that. If you'll even evaluate what kind of car they are, meaning how likely are they to go fast, you have got hurry sickness. The truth is, we've all got hurry sickness. Well, what are the downsides? Why is it bad to be busy? Well, this passage helps us. Remember, I just gave those short quotes out of verse 40 and 41. I want to go back to him now, showing that there are three words that are true of Martha because she's so hurried. Remember that she's distracted, she's worried, and she's upset. Let's talk about those three for just a moment. Distracted. Martha was distracted. Distracted from what? Well, in the context, we see she's distracted from hearing Jesus. He's the focus of everybody else but her. And friends, that's the challenge. Hurry, busyness, distracts us from connecting meaningfully with God. If you're going 100 miles an hour, your spiritual life will be an inch deep. It's just the reality of the matter. In fact, philosopher Dallas Willard says, hurry is the great enemy of the spiritual life in our day. It's really true. If you want to recognize the presence of God with you, you've got to go at a reasonable pace to be aware that he's there. If you want to hear the voice of God guiding you, you can't be hurried. You'll miss it. If you want to sense the warmth of God's affection for you, that will be lost if you're flying through life. We must discipline ourselves to hit the brakes, and move at a more modest pace if we're really going to flourish spiritually. If you will, distraction. It's like there's a barrier between us and God when we're going too fast. Busyness is incompatible with spiritual thriving. It's been demonstrated in Scripture, my life, and yours as well. For the sake of our connecting with Jesus, we've got to slow down. Well, so that's distracted from Jesus. Also, it says, Jesus says, you're worried. Worried is about that internal unrest, that sense of it is not well with my soul. I'm missing shalom. Shalom is that peace. And that peace, that restfulness, only comes when you're moving at a reasonable pace. If you're going fast, if you're hurried, you're uptight. It's like you're drinking poison that's rotting the soul of the life Christ wants to bring. And poor Martha was not well inside because of busyness. In addition to that, I've said that the busyness, it's like a barrier in our walk with Jesus. It's like a poison that messes with our emotional life. One more. Remember, it says that she was upset. This is the irritableness, the agitatedness that results in treating people poorly. You're just biting people's heads off. In fact, remember, Martha said to Jesus, "Why don't you care about what's going on here?" Poor Jesus, he didn't do anything wrong, and yet she's snapping at him. Yes, when you're really fast, you can't love well. You know, Jesus said the point of life is to love God and to love people, but when you're busy, you're irritable and you end up treating people less beautifully than God's calling you to. I'm going to use, if I called the unrest inside poison, I'm going to call this venom. You know, venom is a poison that when you bite somebody, you cause them harm. Well, that's what happens. So busyness is a barrier, a poison that destroys you, and a venom that causes you to end up hurting others. It's no good. So what's the solution? What is the solution to our busyness? I've heard some say, it's too bad we don't have a 30-hour day. It turns out 24 hours is just not enough. If the Lord could intervene in the universe and make it a 30-hour day, that would be great. No, it wouldn't. The problem's not the amount of hours. The problem is our propensity to increasingly cram more into the hours we got. If we had 30-hour days, it wouldn't be long before we were filling those up. That's the issue. And what's great about this passage is that Jesus addresses that. Remember what it said in verse 42? Jesus said, few things are needed. Think about that. Few things are really needed. Martha, you're doing so many things. But as far as what's really needed, Martha, you need to learn that few things are needed. We need to learn that few things are needed. This is the principle of simplification. Friends, Jesus is calling Martha and us to simplify our lives. You don't need this stuff. Our culture is screaming at us, do more, do more, do more. Look at, get your kids in this travel sports. I mean, the sports of kids these days include so much time and travel. And I'm not saying it's all wrong. I'm just saying we can't do it all. Recreation, you need that. Entertainment, did you watch that? News, do you know about that? Possessions, do you have that? By the time we follow the example and the cultural pressure, our lives are so full that we've lost that which matters most, connection with the Lord and love for those we live with. And so, may God guide us in the simplification of our lives, intentionally analyzing all that we're doing, asking the question, Lord, should something here go? And making the hard, I would add, ruthless decision to cut things out. When I say ruthless, that reminds me of this quote where Dallas Willard, remember he said that busyness is the number one enemy of the spiritual life. He also said, you must ruthlessly eliminate hurry from your life. To simplify our lives, to get it to a life-giving pace, we're going to have to be ruthless and intentional and make hard decisions, but fight to increase control of the pace. Hit the brakes by eliminating things so that we can go at a more life-giving pace. I'll remind you of verse 42 where Jesus said, Mary has chosen what is better. Look at Mary. She's a better way to live. And it will not be taken from her. This reference to not be, Jesus is saying that, listen, Mary has found truth that brings life. She's not going to lose that. Mary's gaining eternal stuff. The food was great, and the appetizers and the desserts and all the different courses was great, but it's gone. You need to realize that with Jesus, there is stuff that lasts. In some cases, less is more. You've heard that phrase, less is more. Sounds crazy, right? Some of us think, if you want more life, cram more in. No. Sometimes by taking it out and having a life that has less, you actually have more life, connection with God, love of living, love of people. Yes. often with Christ, less is actually more. And Mary wasn't losing, she was gaining. What about Mary? Some people say Mary's lazy. I mean, she's sitting at Jesus' feet, letting her sister do all the work. Is she lazy? I don't know. I don't think so. I speculate, actually, that Mary had been helping earlier in the evening. She and her sister were working together, but at a certain point, Mary is like, Martha, you have a vision for this meal, an extravagance that I don't think is necessary. And if you want to keep doing more, knock yourself out. But I've had enough. I've done my part. I'm going to go learn from Jesus. I would argue that Mary said, I want to be involved in serving, but not so much that it takes me from Christ. Some people say, I want my life to be full, but not too full, but I can't figure out what's too full. I'll tell you what's too full. If you're being pulled from connecting with Jesus, if you're growing irritable and failing to love the people around you, it's too full. And so we need to keep hitting the brakes and simplifying until we find that pace that enables us to connect with Jesus and be loving to others and full life. We don't want to be wasting our time or bored. No, we want a full life, but not too full. May God give us wisdom as we seek to find that balance. Friends, I want to share with you a day when this passage so powerfully transformed my life. It was a long time ago. In fact, I can tell you the exact date. It was January the 8th in 2002. So what's that? 23 years ago. Hey, 23 years ago. I was a young pastor at the time, and I was busy, way too busy. So busy, in fact, that I was on the verge of a nervous breakdown. I think I had a nervous breakdown. It was ugly. I was melting down. The church I was at was building a church. I was trying to be the general contractor and building my family a house. Yeah, what was I thinking? As well as all of my normal responsibilities. I was just go. I didn't take a day off, didn't stop. And I drove myself into the ground and hit a wall where emotionally I was a basket case. Thankfully, the church I was at gave me a week to get away and try to figure out why my life wasn't working. And my wife handed me a book called Having a Merry Heart in a Martha World. That's the very passage we're studying, having a merry heart in a Martha world. And I went away and I went up to Wisconsin, read that book. And in the book, it had this little parable, a story that just hit me to the heart. In the story, God speaks to this person and says, hey, I have a request of you. I need you to take 3 rocks. God actually put the 3 rocks in their wagon and said, would you take these 3 rocks up to the top of the hill? And so the person who loved the Lord said, of course I will, and started their way up towards that hill when another townsperson came and said, where are you going? Up to the hill. Since you're going that way, could you take 2 of my rocks up to the top of the hill as well? And the rock puller said, sure, I'd love to help. And so they added their 2 rocks. And then a little further, someone came to them and said, hey, would you like a glass of lemonade? You look hot. And thank you. And after taking the lemonade giver said, hey, since you're going up the hill, could you take 3 of my rocks? Well, I felt obligated. They gave me lemonade. I guess I'll take your rocks too. And more rocks and more rocks. And finally, as this person was struggling up the hill, the weight was so severe and the effort so demanding that about halfway up the hill, this person just collapsed to the ground with sweat beating down and utter exhaustion. And the person shook their fist at the Lord and said, how can you force me or expect me to get all these rocks up the hill? And God steps into the story at that point and goes, I'm not expecting you to get all these rocks up the hill. The Lord starts taking rocks out of the wagon. And eventually the Lord gets back to just the original 3 and said, this is what I asked you to do. You put the others in. And now that the wagon was back to the 3, the project was quite doable. and the person made it up to the top successfully. Friends, you see the point. We add more and more to our lives based on people pleasing or meeting expectations or just being nice, and we end up killing ourselves. The question is, Lord, what are you asking me to do? I realized on this season of burnout so profoundly that this was my problem, that up in Wisconsin, I found 3 rocks on the path I was walking on as I prayed. And I made this little monument, if you will. I have had this for all these years since. It's got a little brass plaque here, reminds me of the incredibly important lesson. Lord, don't let me destroy my life anymore. I want to make sure that I cram in only as much as you ask me to cram in, because few things are needed, Jesus said. Make sure, like Mary, you do what's most important. Can I pray for us towards that end? God, we need help. We live in a busy culture that's driving us to the frayed edge of sanity. Would you guide us to the simple life? Give us the wisdom to analyze and the courage to say no, and help us get to a pace, slow, hit the brakes, to where we're connecting with you and loving others the way you intended. Please help us to slow down. We pray this in Christ's name. Amen.
Well, thanks again for joining us here at the Compass Online. I hope that you were challenged with that speed of joy message, and I hope that you have already made plans to be back with us next week. See you then.